Hello, I am Tara Omatosho, and welcome to Inspired in Action, the special podcast for the Virtuous Hour show with Lady Tiffany Nicole. On this segment, we will be interviewing modern Proverbs women who are taking action in their business. Oh, this is Tara from Inspired in Action, where we interview women who are taking action in their business. Today, I am interviewing Marjorie McAllister, owner and operator of Renewed Therapeutic Services. How are you doing today, Marjorie?
I'm doing great, Tara. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I can't wait for listeners to hear about your business and what it is that you do. So can you tell us, reintroduce yourself and tell us about what you do?
Sure. So my name is Marjorie McAllister, and I am a psychotherapist. And basically, I'm the founder of Renew Therapeutic Services, and that is basically a mental health organization, and we predominantly serve women who are struggling with depression, anxiety, to include also bereavement when you look at that depression umbrella. We also serve men as well as adolescents in that area. Renew Therapeutic Services also specializes in helping women who have been involved with trauma in their past, also known as post-traumatic stress disorder, but they may not even realize that. So that's another area of specialty, as well as working with married couples.
So Marjorie, how did you get started in becoming a psychotherapist? What made you interested in becoming a psychotherapist?
Sure. So I have worked in the industry for well over 20 years. I've had different roles. I've worked in hospitals. I've worked in the community. And throughout the years, I've just seen a growing need. Mm-hmm. And I felt like my skill set could be better serviced as a psychotherapist in developing the way that I want to serve people versus working for someone. I think I've gained a lot of information, and it hasn't been anything that's been wasteful. I think anytime you work for someone, you can take that information and that knowledge and use it. So I don't feel like any of my experience has been wasted. In fact, it has catapulted me to where I am now.
So Marjorie, where can people contact you if they need your help or your services? Where can they find you?
Tara, thank you so much for asking, because I really do want to help as many people as possible. So I can be located, and my business is Renew Therapeutic Services. The website is renewtherapyservices.com. So if you go to the website and complete the contact information, we should be able to find you. Again, the name of the website is renewtherapyservices.com.
Awesome. So in regards to working with women and business women, what are some signs maybe that you are dealing with maybe post-traumatic stress, or that you need to come in and see a mental health clinician? What are some signs that we should be looking for?
So if you're referring to trauma, sometimes women, men, children don't feel any signs at all. That's the tricky part. They're just going about their life, but then suddenly they might feel numb, or they might have a sudden burst of a memory that may have happened 20 years ago if they're an adult. If they're a child, they might just be really closed in, reserved, or really happy and wearing that mask. So it looks different for different people. So for women or men who have had trauma. Sometimes they have nightmares. Sometimes they'll find themselves unable to stay focused. They're going to notice a decrease in their work performance, a decrease in their ability to sleep and rest throughout the night, and an overall sense of not really wanting to connect with friends and family. And the more that the memory comes back, the more stressful they become, and the more anxious they become, and the more withdrawn they become. So it's really important for anyone who's experiencing any of those symptoms to seek mental health treatment immediately, because the sooner you can get help, the quicker you can start your healing process. It's really harder for women and men if the longer you wait and the deeper you go into your trauma or the inability to function on a day-to-day basis, the longer it's going to take for you to get out of it.
Do you find that it's people come to you because they want the help, or it's a family member or a friend or someone or a workplace that's urging them to get help?
That's actually a really good question, Tara. And a lot of it has to do with how successful their therapy is going to be. So if most of the times if it's an adult, it's usually self-driven. Usually it's someone who's like, wait a minute, I'm totally off. I'm not functioning. I'm irritable. I'm like short-tempered with my spouse or my children. And I just need to get some help because this is not typically how I operate, or this is, and I know it's not right. So usually they come in and they want help, and that's their trigger. As you're younger, some people who are younger, like minors, it will usually be a family member that is like, something's wrong with my child, something's wrong with my daughter or my son. These are the behaviors that I'm noticing a shift in, and I just wanted to come out because I'm feeling like they might be going through something, and I'm not sure what that is. And then others are court ordered. I will say that I find that the individuals who are either court ordered or a spouse made them come typically are not as open in therapy. It's something that you really have to want for yourself. And unless you want it, someone can urge you to do it. And if you want to do it, then great. But if someone urges you and then you really don't want to do it, and you're going out of obligation, then you're not going to get as much out of the therapeutic process as you really could if you roll up your sleeves and if you're ready to do the work.
Yeah, I found that too. So we touched a little bit, you talked a little bit about adolescents and working with children. And I know in the news just today, one of my friends had contacted me and said, please pray for our children. They are, experiencing, suicide to the greatest levels. And I know you and I have spoken a little bit about that. Can you share with the audience about, the things that you're seeing, and maybe the things that we need to look for as parents when our children maybe need to come in and see a therapist?
Yeah. Yeah, Tara, it's a huge problem, and I definitely want to urge parents to have your antennas up and to really know your kids and know when there's a shifting that's occurring in either their mood, their personality, because this is a big problem. And I can tell you that throughout the years that I've been in the mental health industry, again, over 20, I am noticing an increase not only in depression, but in suicide. And that is also penetrating to our children. Years ago, we didn't see as many young kids trying or committing suicide or cutting or hurting themselves. And so this is a growing epidemic, not only in the United States, but in the world. When you look at the United States alone, you're looking at 16 million people suffer from depression, and 123 Americans die from suicide daily. 123 Americans commit suicide successfully, if I want to use that term, which is sort of odd to use, but that's on a daily basis, just to give you a snapshot or a picture of the epidemic that we're dealing with. So for parents who are questioning, where is my child? What's going on? You're going to have to know what your child's baseline is. If they're typically quiet, then there might not be anything wrong with them, to that clinical level. But if you know that your child is usually that kid that is out the door, very personable, open, and all of a sudden there's a shift, and now they are staying in their room a lot. They don't want to connect with their friends. They're really not talking to you much as a parent. And they're staying with social media connections a whole lot, then those are all flag signs. Those are all flag signs. A decline in their work can also be. What they're telling you about themselves, be really careful. And don't take it lightly when someone says, I don't feel really good about myself. I don't feel pretty. I don't like myself. I just want to sleep all day. I wish I weren't here. I'm such a failure. I hate myself. Those are sort of the things that are just sort of maybe the beginning, or it could be deep in. The other thing that I want to caution, however, is you can also have that kid that wears the mask. You've heard the coin phrase mask all the time. That's that kid that looks happy, that gets the good grades, that tries to be that perfect kid. And so they go under the radar. There's no glaring sign of distress because they're doing all the right things. They're checking all the right boxes, but they're wearing their mask. And it's not until they're by themselves and that they're alone that smile comes off their face and is parked on their shelf. And they really start to feel what they feel like they have to hide. And so they're hiding their depression. That child is going to be a little harder to sort of identify their depression, because depression looks so different with so many kids and they wear so many different faces. So what I would advise is, if in doubt, always side toward caution and have a conversation with your child. I think that's something that we tend to forget, to just have a candid conversation, not necessarily when they're in trouble or when they're getting on your nerves or when they're not doing what they're supposed to, but take them out to a restaurant nearby or their favorite little location or a car ride and just have a dialogue and say, hey, you know what? I'm just checking in as a parent. I'm just checking in as mom. What's going on? Tell me how you're feeling. What are some things you're doing in school? What are some things you're struggling with? And have a conversation and see where it goes. If that doesn't work, then have them checked out. It doesn't hurt to just make an appointment with a therapist and have them evaluated. The worst thing that can happen is the therapist or the mental health provider will say, okay, this is normal behavior, and kudos to you for bringing your kid in. Just keep a safe look, keep an eye out on your child, but we have their file here. In the event that you need to come back, we have a file for them at any point in time that they can come back and use. But if there is a problem, then kudos to you for catching it.
Yeah. And there's nothing like catching it before things happen, because like you said, depression shows itself in so many different ways for so many different people, whether it's an adult or a child. I mean, depression can just be like all of a sudden you're, like you said, maybe you were quiet, but now all of a sudden you're social and you're trying to show things and do things that you normally didn't do. Just some erratic behavior. And you definitely have to be mindful of that. So, okay. Marjorie, you also are a speaker. What names topics that you speak about and that you are available to speak at different organizations or different companies to talk about different topics? What are those topics and that you speak about?
Sure. So I speak about the topics that I am really passionate about, and I feel like I have several years of experience in to be able to speak on these subject matters. And those buckets would be suicide prevention, depression, suicide prevention in children specifically, trauma, blended families, and marital couples, and how do we break through the mundane? How do we break through the humdrum? Or if you're in crisis, how do we break through that? What are some cracks that we built in the foundational levels of our marriage that may need to be repaired? So we may need to take a few steps backwards before going forward. So I speak on, those are just a few areas, but those are some hot topics that I'm really passionate about. So definitely, if any of you have venues that are coming up, you can also contact me via my website. I'd be more than happy to entertain a potential speaking engagement for you.
All right. Thank you, Marjorie, for being available to interview with us. I know that you shared a wealth of information with us, and I wanted to just thank you for that. And I know that somebody's life or mindset was changed by hearing this interview. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Tara. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Inspired into Action, the MPW edition. This podcast is heard on the Virtuous Hour with Lady Tiffany Nicole every second Saturday of the month and available at inspiredintooaction.com.